Sports Minutes with Ziaul Raushan.
Money FM 89.3. It's time for Sports Minutes with me, Ziaul Raushan. Now, some weekends are better than others. This weekend, though, was not one of them from a certain Deepanraj Ganesan's perspective, at least. That's because Le Professor was kept on his toes all throughout with news developments across so many fronts, which means we have a jam-packed show to get through with match day 28 in the Singapore Premier League to review, the Lion City Sailors and their ACL 2 drama to discuss, the return of a certain Kadir Yahya to analyse, and the Women's Premier League to get you up to speed with. So without further ado, let's get stuck in. Deepan, you ready?
Yes, very ready. Like you mentioned, a lot of things to discuss, so let's get cracking.
First things first, let's talk about the Singapore Premier League. Match day 28 saw 4 games. Let me run you through the results. A 7-goal thriller that Balestier Khalsa edged against Geylang International on Friday. The Young Lions and Brunei DPMM playing out a 1-1 draw. On Sunday, 2 games, Hougang United holding the Lion City Sailors to a 1-1 draw, and BG Tampines Rovers smashing 4 past Albrechts Niigata. Let's start on Friday, a 7-goal thriller to kickstart the weekend, and it was a tale of 2 Japanese hitmen. Let's talk about Tomoyuki Doi first, overtaking Mirko Grabovač's record to set a new record for most goals in a domestic season. It was really a matter of when rather than if, really.
Yeah, just to clarify, I hope you mean hitman and not hitman, because I think a very different kind of audience that will be getting stuck into this if it's hitman. But this game really showed what the SPL is sometimes all about, and that is the goals, right? Defending is not something that's important. And Tomoyuki Doi and Kodai Tanaka benefited here. I just want to talk about Tanaka for a bit. I think he went through a bit of a rough patch not too long ago, but he is quality. For a team like Balestier to have him, I think it's a blessing for them, and they would hope that there's more of this to come from Kodai Tanaka in the remaining weeks, because Balestier are, of course, chasing that 4th spot. It would make it 2 consecutive 4th place finishes in a row. I think Balestier also need to realise this, that Albrechts are a team that's struggling for consistency. So if Balestier are able to put a few wins together, 4th spot is there for the taking. And we talked about this last week, Raushan, that Balestier are struggling with injuries. So this was a massive win for them in that context of things.
And let's talk about Tomoyuki Doi. What's the ceiling here? Is he going to set a record so hard for anyone else to beat?
Yeah, I think a few weeks ago, someone on comms mentioned about whether it's possible for him to hit 50 goals. I see that happening, because you look at Tomoyuki Doi, and this game was an example, right, where I think for large periods of the game, he was not really involved in the game, and then just like that, switch of feet and then a great goal to score. So that's Tomoyuki Doi for you. He doesn't really need his team to be playing well for him to get the goal. So I definitely see him getting a few more goals, and 50 I think is the next mark to reach.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Geylang play out the rest of the season. They've got a 7-point difference to second place Tampines, but they've got a 9-point buffer against the 4th spot, which is Albrechts and Balestier Khalsa. And like Deepan touched on, Balestier aiming for that 4th spot. They are 3 points away in 5th position to Albrechts Niigata, who are in 4th. Let's move on to the Lion City Sailors, who evidently have got bigger fish to fry later this week. Yet Rankovic put out this strong lineup. I guess it's the Sailors' quality, because whoever they rest, they still have capable replacements coming in. Yet they had to settle for a point against Hougang United. You think it was a case of going in second gear, just saving themselves for that big midweek assignment?
Yeah, so I don't know if I agree if they were in second gear, because I don't think footballers sort of go into matches saying, I'm only going to play 50% today or 20% today. I don't think that was the case. I think they all went out to try and get a win, but I think Hougang made it very difficult for them. I think Hougang, some may call it dark arts, some may call it smart, some may call it tactical, but they did what they had to do to sort of hold the Sailors. And I think this match is an example of what we maybe hope to expect in these remaining weeks from a neutral's perspective, where you sort of still want BG Tampines Rovers to put pressure on them. And I think this match showed, because I think sometimes Farhan Zulkifli making a better decision, or maybe Plazonia making a better decision, and they could have won this game. So it shows, that it's not a given that actually on any given day, Sailors could drop points if BG Tampines Rovers continue winning, and then suddenly you have the title race back on. So I hope to see more of that. I think Hougang have shown that players are hungry to play against Sailors to try and get the victory. So right now, Sailors are the prey, and Predators are welcome to sort of throw a span in the works.
Yeah, absolutely. As a neutral, we want that title race to be alive. Last week, Robert Iziakor questioned Hougang's commitment and their attitude to the cause. I think they proved that. And to your point, there's very much still somewhat a title race because there's a 7-point difference the Sailors have and they have a game in hand. But like you say, anything can happen in football, and that's because the Sailors are still involved in ACL 2 competition.
Yeah, and I think also you mentioned about Robert there, being very honest with his media interview last week, and I think it sort of paid off because Zaiful Nizam, the player that he questioned, had a blinder. So sometimes these things work, sometimes these things don't. So I think all the SPL teams will be now looking forward to matches against Sailors to prove that, hey, we are a good team as well, and we can sort of make the title race a bit more exciting.
Speaking of looking forward to matches, one match all of Singapore is looking forward to is that ACL 2 clash on Wednesday, the Lion City Sailors against Sanfrecce Hiroshima. This was very different last week because the Sailors had lost the first leg 6-1. Yet, in no small part due to you, things have changed dramatically. Let me just run everyone through the timeline of events, okay? Wednesday, 5th of March, Sailors lose their first leg quarter-final 6-1 away to Sanfrecce Hiroshima, seemingly sealing their exit from continental competition. Thursday, 6th of March, murmurs emerged regarding Valerie Germain's ineligibility, and Sanfrecce had fielded him as a substitute. Friday, 7th of March, you break the news that Sanfrecce Hiroshima have indeed erroneously fielded a player who was meant to be serving a retrospective 3-match ban picked up for his previous club MacArthur, with AFC launching an investigation. Saturday, 8th of March, I receive a text from you and then the news breaks. AFC confirmed that the Lion City Sailors have been awarded a 3-0 first leg win, while Hiroshima received a US $1,000 fine and forfeited half their US $160,000 participation fee. So really just drama, basically, to say that. I've obviously given us a quick rundown of the events that transpired, but Deepan, tell us from your point of view, when did you realize this unprecedented turn of events was indeed a possibility?
Yeah, you say in small part thanks to me. So I'm not quite sure about that. But what really happened was on Thursday night, Friday morning, I was waiting for Manchester United's game to start, and I was in bed when I, let's just say, received a sort of tip-off, and I actually went over to my laptop, because this is the kind of tip-off that you like, hey, I need to check it right away, right? So I opened my laptop and I went through several documents. Took maybe 30-45 minutes when I really realized, okay, you know what, there is definitely something wrong here. But it was about 3-4 a.m. in the morning, so I stayed up until about 8 a.m., 9 a.m. and I started sending out queries to AFC, to the Sailors. At this point, I wasn't sure if they were aware of it, but I sent it out anyway. So after I made some calls and I was quite sure, I spoke to my boss about it. I said, you know what, this is the situation at hand. Can we do a story right now? And then she asked me if I was confident. I said I was, and we put it out right away. So I think there was a bit of a nervous wait on Saturday because, you don't know if the information that you put out is completely correct. Have I missed something? Did I miss a fine print there that actually says he could have played? I was quite sure that there is some wrongdoing here, but what if, AFC decides to say, oh, it wasn't a grave enough error and we will just let the game go on? Because I've already run with the possibility that it could be a 3-0 overturn, right? So, yeah, sometimes these stories can be stressful, but I think once you read through the regulations, it was quite clear that there was something wrong here and we went ahead with it. So, yeah, I think at the end of the day, now the matter at hand is what happens next? What's the approach to the game?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Some people are labeling it the Ramadan miracle. Some people are saying Auntie Ng's luck is infinite because of that story you ran about the 83-year-old fan who travelled all the way to Japan to witness that game, and somehow she came back with a 3-0 victory for us. So you talk about the players needing to seize this opportunity because it's a second chance being given, right? We obviously haven't attended the pre-match press conference yet, but what do you think is going through their mind? And from Rankovic's perspective, does he just set out to park the bus because they can just defend such a big cushion?
Yeah, now looking ahead to the press conference, my first question is really going to be that, are you going to park the bus? And you look at it from a perspective of the Sailors. Can you really just put 11 men behind the ball and think that you can get away with it? I just don't think so at this level. I still feel that Sanfrecce will pick them out. So I think they've got to stick to what they know best, which is how they've played in AFC competitions, which is really not so much a defensive effort, but they really still have an attacking threat. You still got to play your Maxim Lestiens, you still got to play your Bart Ramslas, you still got to play your Shawal Anwar. I think you still need an attacking threat against Sanfrecce Hiroshima. But there's other things going for Sailors, which is the climate, the pitch. The pitch is a big one. I mean, in recent history, we've seen really talented sides come to Jalan Besar and struggle struggle, and this could be one of that as well. But think about it from a Sanfrecce Hiroshima perspective. They're hurting now. They're hungry now. Maybe sometimes they might feel a sense of injustice almost, although I don't know where that would come from because it was a clear mistake. But they would be thinking, okay, you know what? 3-0, bring it on. We can score 4, we can score 5. So very, very intriguing from both sides of the equation. If you ask me, I think it's doable from a Sailors perspective because yes, I know, we saw a gulf in difference in terms of class in the first leg. But when you put all things together, when you go into a match 3-0 up as opposed to 0-0, when you sort of are playing in an environment which is a bit more suited to you than the cold climate that was Hiroshima, I think all these things play into your factor, and I hope that the Sailors will give everybody a result and a night to remember.
And speaking of everybody, we hope the weather plays ball, we hope the playing surface plays ball for the Sailors' perspective, but we hope the fans turn out as well. And me, together with the Final Whistle, have put out a ticket giveaway, so do get involved. Go to Instagram and check out the ticket giveaway. Plenty to look forward to. That match happening Wednesday 8 p.m. at the Jalan Besar Stadium. The Lion City Sailors holding a 3-0 advantage against Sanfrecce Hiroshima. Can they get the job done? We'll find out. Moving on to the other big news of the weekend is the return of Kadir Yahya as the Unleash the Roar's Director of Football. Now, Deepan, before we talk about Kadir's legendary status and achievements at BG Patum, in Sunday Straits Times, you ran with the headline, Critic Kadir takes up the hot seat. We're always agreed that honesty is needed in local football, right? But my question is, are the decision makers ready for Kadir's unapologetic honesty?
I would say yes, because I think with Kadir, you always know what you're getting, and the fact that they've approached him, they should know what they're getting out of this. And that's why it sort of makes me happily surprised that they have made this appointment, because I think you can always sort of like move back from criticism and say, you know what, like we won't welcome an individual like this in the organization. But the fact that they've made this hire shows that they perhaps have a brand new thinking. I spoke to Kadir at the Kallang Football Hub, and really you can still see the passion, the sort of desire to improve things shine right through. Maybe perhaps too early for him to sort of like pinpoint areas to improve on, but one of the things he mentioned was, of course, trying to get the youth teams in Singapore to play more regularly against international class opposition. So this could mean travelling to Johor to play your JDT or even your Thai teams, right? And this needs to happen more regularly. So maybe every week or every weekend kind of thing. And it's true, because I think every time we go into a regional competition, we seem taken aback by the quality, because almost every week we play only local sides, right? And when we're playing in the SYL, how much do you really improve and how much can you really see the difference? So good move. I'm waiting to see the kind of changes that happen with Kadir. But yeah, good appointment from me.
Ever so often, local football throws up a Hail Mary. This seems like a situation where a lot of fans are hoping Kadir Yahya's legendary status and the fact that he's been there, done that, will help resurrect Singapore football. Beyond Kadir's return, what caught my eye in your report was the news of the UTR Technical Advisory Committee featuring Desmond Ong as chairman, and the other members are Sutomo Ogura, Coach Gavin Lee, as well as Aidi Iskandar, a former national captain and a former coach of the national under-23 team. What's the plan here, Deepan?
Yeah, so I think it's more to sort of align Unleash the Raw with the Football Association of Singapore. Yes, you can have a UTR that's primarily focused on the youth initiatives and the youth objective, but then it all needs to sort of like feed back into the national team, right? The national team is under the purview of the FAS, so it's more to align that way. But also some may say that it sort of is good when you have a few people of talent and of know-how looking into the national team and sort of the players that are coming through. So I think it's a good move to have a sort of a body being in charge of the national team and then aligning with people like Kadir or Unleash the Raw.
And you talk about all that alignment, I just hope it aligns with the whole deforestation project that's about to happen in 2025. Just about enough time to get you up to speed to match day 2 in the Women's Premier League. Hougang United and Geylang International playing out a 1-1 draw, and then the reigning champions, the Lion City Sailors, kick-starting their 2025 campaign with a 2-1 victory. Nor Adriana Lim marking her debut with the winner 7 minutes from the end. So Deepan, the league season up and running, but your colleague Kimberly and you put a stirring article out, link in description if you want to check it out, regarding some concerns that remain for the women's game here.
Yeah, I think the starting point was really the fact that professional services firm Deloitte had sort of pulled out of or rather did not extend the sponsorship beyond the 3 years. So in 2022, when they signed the deal, it was a 3 + 2 years. Did not continue that sponsorship. So it really was the starting point in terms of, okay, where do we stand now 3 years after that sponsorship? Without a sponsor, can they really kick on from here? That sort of was the question. And I think we sort of answered that question in the article, where there are still problems that persist, from on-field issues in terms of something as basic as a scoreboard, which is bizarre, right? Because I think the fact that a fan who regularly attends these games was telling me that, hey, sometimes if you come in a bit late, you've got to ask people around, hey, what's the score, how many minutes, and that was the experience for me as well, because I've attended 8 or 9 games last season, and that was always the issue, that the scoreboard is not there, and I'm wondering, hey, from a fan's perspective, it's bizarre, right? It's a basic. So things have got to improve, but where I really was more interested in was the off-field matters in terms of marketing, social media. What more can you do? There was a line there that said social media for WPL was dormant for like 3 to 4 months. This cannot happen in this day and age. So really, what are FAS doing, or maybe even clubs doing, to sort of like push the women's football agenda? Because I think more can be done here. And I think there was just some mix of suggestions and mix of input from players, officials, and coaches in terms of how the game can improve. Just one more thing I just want to touch on also is in this sort of hunt for information and quotes, I did get some pushback from some players and coaches who were not very keen on speaking for fear of the season is just starting, I'd rather not, and all. I think the more people keep quiet, the more things don't improve, and unless you are doing something on your own to sort of improve things, then it's quite disappointing when you don't want to speak to the media openly. But we try, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we got an article out, and we hope there's some changes that come from it.
Yeah, honesty has already been mentioned on this Sports Minutes episode. That's what Sports Minutes strives to do, and to your point, that's what players, the stakeholders, need to do to try and improve the game. You talk about marketing and social media. I tell you what, when I try and collate results to run through our listeners, I also struggle, because I go to the website, it's not there. I go to the official social media pages, it's not there. I have to go to fan pages, I have to go to certain club pages, and again, such a small thing that can be done just for visibility, and I think that's so important. One suggestion that also came up in your article is the idea of tying the WPL together with the SPL and moving the kickoff time such that the WPL game can be the curtain raiser for the SPL games, which we know draws a much bigger audience, right? What are some pain points if that were to happen?
Yeah, so I think there are pain points in the sense of like timing, right? How early do you do a kickoff? Can you do a kickoff without sort of hampering the product, which means not playing under the heat? But I think you got to try. You got to try at least a few times to see and see the feedback from there. But I think from a neutral's perspective, from a journalistic perspective, I would love to see double headers as well, because I'm of course an Australian football fan, and they do it quite regularly where they have back-to-back matches from the Women's League and the A-League happening at the same stadium, and they build it as double headers. So you imagine a Lion City Sailors fan group being able to support their women's team and the men's team. So I think people got to get a bit more creative and stop saying, cannot be the sort of first word that comes to mind. Try to make things a bit more interesting for ladies. Try to get people on board from the men's game into the women's game as well.
And also from a broadcast perspective, think about it. The cameras are already in place for the SPL games. Why not bring in the camera people a couple of hours earlier and broadcast the WPL as well? Simple, more eyeballs, right? But anyway, this conversation will move on forevermore. Let's give a quick shout out to that match happening between Brisbane Roar and the WPL All-Stars. That's happening 8 p.m. on 4th of April at Bishan Stadium. Tickets are now on sale, so be sure to show some love. In the meantime, Deepanraj Ganesan, thank you for spending your Monday with me. I look forward to the game midweek.
Thank you.
Sports Minutes on Money FM 89.3.